Hey, Charlie. Ade. Of course, of course. Next year, uh, he's concerned, especially his role. And things like that. Hmm. Charlie, for come like it will help. Charlie, the transport will be easy. The fuel there, Charlie. Leicester or Leicester. Leicester, I think it's Leicester. Every day the money you spend. Eh, they grab hmm, drop them so small. Hmm. Some days me, I told you that this year I have a feeling that City, but once they've struggled enough, Charlie. Two, only two. Oh, why? Why you want the government to make like 10? Or what? Means you have, what make them take Charlie. You know, Hello. Good evening. Hello. Good evening.
Uh,
Yeah, the line is breaking. Can you hear me clearly? Hello. But I can hear you though your line is breaking.
yes, I can hear you.
There's
Yeah,
there's
hello.
there's a feedback from your end. Hello. 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 Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I guess we can start.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we've had a little bit of discussion around strategy, stakeholders, and mission. The last time we started discussing strategy, I'll briefly touch on a few things that we did. So we started talking about strategy. We talked about the definition of strategy and then the levels of strategy. So that's the outline. We are looking at the definition of strategy, the levels of strategy, strategic management and business analysis, stakeholder or stakeholders and expectations. Hello, I can still hear some feedback in the background.
That's mine.
Yes.
Okay, maybe. Okay. Is it okay now?
Okay, I think it's manageable. Let's go on.
Okay.
All right. So we've touched on definition of strategy, levels of strategy. We'll continue with strategic management and business analysis, and stakeholders and expectations. Let me see if I can record this session so that later on you can have access to the video and play it as many times as you want.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's already recording. Okay. So according to Alfred Chandler, strategy is the determination of the basic long-term goals and the objectives of an enterprise, and the adoption of courses of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. Hello, I'm still getting feedback. Hello. Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Is it okay now?
Hello. But can you hear me? If you can hear me, I can continue. Can you hear me clearly? Hello. 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 Hello, Mr. Anson. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen, please? Okay. So we have a definition of, oh, it's gone off. So according to Peter Drucker, strategy is a pattern of activities that seeks to achieve the objectives of the organization and adapt its scope, resources, and operations to environmental changes in the long term. I think we've discussed this in our previous lecture, and we are asking these basic questions when an organization sets up its strategic plan. That directors of the organization should be asking themselves where the organization is at the moment, where the organization is now, and where do they want the organization to be in the next 5 years' time, or that is in the long-term vision of the organization. How do we get from where we are now to where we want to be? How do we get to where we are? We discussed this the last time. How large will the company be in the next 5 years? What will it be doing when it gets to that stage in its life? And where will it be operating? Is it going to operate only in the current market, or is going to expand the market, or is going to move into another territory or another market? How many employees will it need, and what skills will they require? So the various categories of employees and then the skill sets of the employees will be required in this strategic plan. What technology should be used? There are various technologies that can be used. So the organization must decide in its strategic plan on what kind of technology to use for their strategy. We also talked about the different levels of strategy. We identified three main levels. And so here we have the corporate strategy level, we have the business strategy level, and the functional strategy level. Now, you reckon that the functional strategy level is quite broader or bigger with respect to this triangle. So, in terms of the volume of work, thus functional strategy actually tells us that there is higher volume of work at the functional strategy level. Business strategy level also has a lot of work to do in terms of the volume of work compared to the corporate strategy level. The corporate strategy level is the highest level, followed by the business strategy level, and then the functional strategy level, where the day-to-day activities of the organization is carried out. So we'll take them one after the other. Corporate strategy is concerned with deciding which business or businesses an entity should be in and setting targets for the achievement of the entity's overall objectives. So as an organization, you have to decide which kind of business you will engage in. There are several businesses. For instance, if you're even talking about going into transport or transportation, you ask yourself, there are different types of transportation. There's rail transport, there's road transport, there is air transport. Which kind of transportation do you want to? And so that is the business strategy that the organization would have to, the corporate strategy that the organization would have to adopt. They have to make that decision. Now, there are various elements of corporate strategy. It includes deciding the purpose of the entity. What is the purpose of this entity? Why is this entity in business? Deciding the scope of the activities. What are the various activities that this entity will be engaged in? You have to decide on matching the chosen business activities to the external environment. Remember, external environment has a lot of influence on business activities. And so you have to be able to match your chosen business activity to the external environment, the dynamics of the external environment. The organization must also be able to match the purpose, the reason for which the entity exists, and the activities of the organization to the expectations of the shareholders. So whatever you do, you should be able to ensure that the purpose of the organization, the activities of the organization is in sync with the expectations of the shareholders of the organization. You should be able to also match the purpose and activities of the organization with the expectations of other stakeholders. So you are not interested in only the owners, but also other stakeholders who are very important, including government, including workers, customers, and then even the local community within which the organization operates. Then again, you should also be able to match the purpose and activities of the organization to expectations of other stakeholders. I've mentioned this already. So we move from corporate strategy to business strategy. At this level, this is the second level below the corporate strategy. This is also referred to as the competitive strategy and is concerned with how each business activity within the entity can contribute towards the achievement of the overall corporate strategy. So you take it that we are looking at an organization that is divided or reorganized into subsidiaries, where you have strategic business units. So for a bigger organization that could have strategic business units, each business unit is treated as a different business. And so each business would have its own business strategy, And for each of these businesses or strategic business units, each would focus on its own markets, all right? And the business strategy is concerned with how to compete successfully in the particular chosen market for that particular business, okay? Successful competitive strategy must be based on either cost leadership or differentiation. So once you are choosing your business strategy, you are going to choose your business strategy based on either cost leadership or differentiation. These are the two main business strategies an organization or a strategic business unit must adapt. What is cost leadership and what is differentiation? Cost leadership simply means that as an organization, you want to become the lowest cost producer in the market. So in terms of the prices of your product and services you put out there, your organization will actually roll out the cheapest into the market. A company that can make product or services or provide services at a lower cost than competitors will succeed by actually selling at lower prices and winning the biggest share of the market. So the intention here is to win a bigger share of the market by what? Competing based on low costs. Competing based on low cost. So you can attract a larger section of the market. The other business strategy is differentiation, which is directly opposite to cost leadership strategy. Here, differentiation means making your product or services quite different from the rest. So you could have for instance, in the vehicle manufacturing or the automobile industry, you have the Toyotas, you have the Nissans, you have Hyundai, you have BMW, you have Ford and Chevrolet, and so many of them. But you realize that there are some other automobile companies whose products are quite targeted at a very small section of the market, targeting the very high-end people, the very rich people. For example, um, cars like Lamborghini. Lamborghini is not made to target the general market. It is targeted at the very rich, the 1 to 2 or 3% rich in the communities or in the societies. These are their target market, and so their product is quite different from the rest of the vehicles that we have in the market. So as far as this is concerned, their product is special, different, and so they can charge higher prices. So one Lamborghini can buy about 20 Toyota Corollas, and that is because these products are specially made, are differently made, and so those organizations compete or operate based on what? Differentiation. So that is the difference. The next level is the functional strategy, where you are dealing with the particular functions within an organization, including the manufacturing function, distribution, marketing and sales, research and development, finance, information technology, human resources, operations, etc., etc. These are where an organization can implement its functional strategy. Now, the purpose of functional strategy should be to support the business strategy. That is the next level after the functional strategy. And then this should also go to support the corporate strategy. Okay, so all these or these three levels of strategy or organizational strategy or strategic management are linked. They are not separate as you see in the picture, although the picture tries to draw the separations in terms of levels, but they are linked such that functional strategy helps to achieve business strategy. Business strategy also helps to achieve the overall corporate strategy. Okay. Now, let's take a little delve into the functional strategy. We are looking at manufacturing organization as a typical example. The objectives of a manufacturing or the functional objectives of a manufacturing organization would include things such as costs, dealing with cost, dealing with quality, dealing with delivery of goods and services, and then flexibility of services. Now, oftentimes, if an organization set to control costs, okay, they do that and with the issue of quality in mind, such that even though they are interested in cutting down costs, they should be very careful not to compromise on quality. And so there's always going to be a trade-off between the costs and then the quality. Because once you want to cut down cost, there is a high tendency the quality of your product may be tempered with. So there should always be a balancing act or a trade-off such that you don't compromise on quality, but then you're also able to reduce or cut down or manage your cost. An organization or a manufacturing organization can also have a strategy of delivering its goods and services, ensuring that the goods and services are delivered at the required speed and then the highest level of reliability as far as customer satisfaction is concerned. Also, there should be the ability for this organization to be able to switch between different products or production methods. Now, notice that usually these manufacturing organizations, especially the ones that manufacture different kinds of products,
oftentimes they don't spend all their time or all the days manufacturing a particular or all the product at the same time. So what they often do is that so they can say that okay, this week we are going to manufacture product A. Next week we are manufacturing product B. And so there should be that kind of flexibility to be able to move or shift from one production or one product to the other. That flexibility should be there, and there should be a strategy to be able to achieve this flexibility. Many a times they use similar equipment, and so they should be able to what flexibly move from one equipment to the other in order to what to change the product or the batch of products that they are producing. Right. Again, for a manufacturing organization, they should have as part of their functional strategy a decision about their plant and equipment. What kind of plant, what kind of equipment are they bringing in? What level of technology will these plant and equipment have? How long can they use these plants and equipment? Notice that the longer plant and equipment are used, the higher the maintenance cost. And so the organization must be able to decide whether they are going to use this equipment for 5 years, for 10 years, and so on and so forth. Taking into consideration the fact that there is changing technology. And so if you're going to use it for a very long time, like 10 years, it is possible that you may not be able to take advantage of new technology. If you're also going to use it for a shorter period, like 5 years, it means that you have to continue to invest in new technologies as and when they come. So the organization must be able to what, make a decision on even the length of use of their plant and equipment, major plant and equipment. They should also be able to have a strategy on the production planning and control, like we talked about a couple of minutes ago. How are they going to plan their product or their production? How are they going to control it? Are they going to, let's say, manufacture or produce a particular product for an entire month? Are they going to do this for an entire week? Are they going to do batch processing? Or how are they going to do it? All these must be considered in the strategy or in the functional strategy of the organization. They have to also have a strategy for labor and staffing. What level of what skill set of the labor are they looking for? Are they looking for permanent employees? Are they looking for part-time employees? And what proportions of permanent and part-time employees are they going to have? Okay, what proportion of their staffing is administrative? What proportion is technical? All these must be considered. The production design and engineering, the kind of product they are going to put out on the market. How is it going to be designed? Okay, is it going to be designed in such a way that it will be so attractive? Is it going to be designed in such a way that it will just be normal design where you can capture almost everybody? Let's take an example. Go back to the automobile companies. You can see cars like Hyundai or Hyundai. They come with very nice design, but then the question is, how is the quality of the product? So if you compare vehicle manufacturing company like Hyundai to, let's say, Nissan, outwardly, you can say the Hyundai cars look very beautiful, very nicely designed. But then in terms of quality, you can say the Nissan cars are more or of higher quality than the Hyundai cars. This is a decision that the organization must take, okay? And this will inform their functional strategy, it will inform their business strategy, it will eventually inform their corporate strategy. All right. Again, the functional strategy must include a strategy on the organization and management of the manufacturing functions. This is actually linked to this very point, the production design and engineering. All right. Any question up to this point? Hello?
No questions.
No question. You are getting it. All right. That's fine. So then let's move on. Now let's look at elements of.
Yes, I'm getting.
All right. Let's look at elements of strategic management. So strategic management is made up of three main elements. So if an organization is carrying out strategic elements, there has to be three main considerations, and they are the strategic position, strategic choices, and then strategy into action. We'll look at each of them in turn. So let's talk about strategic position. What is strategic position? That simply means making an analysis or assessment of where the entity is at the moment. They should be able to understand the position of the company in its market. Every company operates within a market. What is the position of this organization in its market? Okay. In what ways does the company perform better than its competitors? How is it able to do better than its competitors? How is it able to compete more successfully than other competitors? The flip side also is that you should also be asking yourself, how is it that your organization is not doing as well as other organizations within the particular market you are operating in? This is also part of considering the strategic position or the position of the organization. You should be able to understand the factors in the business environment that are affecting the company. How the company will be affected by changes that is likely to happen in the future, more especially in terms of technological changes. Okay, how is technology going to change in the future? You should be able to assess this or make an assessment of this. What are the changes that can affect the organization by way of economic factors? Okay, are there any laws in future that can affect the position of your organization? What are the changes in customers' demand or product preferences? Okay, all these must be considered. And how might these affect what the company produce and sell? Because as long as customers demand a product in a particular way, the organization must also be able to respond to the customer needs and then wants. So that is strategic positioning in terms of the organization setting its strategy for the long term. Still on the strategic position, there are three main aspects of strategic position. We have the environment. So if you are considering or analyzing the strategic position, you have to consider the environment, you have to consider expectations and purposes, you have to consider strategic capability of the entity. These three elements make up the strategic position of an organization according to Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. The environment. So we'll discuss each of them. Basically, when we say environment, we are looking at the external environment of the organization, the aspects of the organization that are outside the presence or outside the organization. This is what we refer to generally as the environment. And so we are looking at the threats and then opportunities within the environment. So threats are aspects of the environment that can hinder the achievement of the organization's objectives. Opportunities are factors within the environment that would help the organization to achieve its objectives. So when we are analyzing the strategic position of the organization, you need to consider these factors. Again, the organization must be able to also consider its strategic capability. Strategic capability basically refers to the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. What are the things within the organization? So here we are looking at within the organization as opposed to the environment where we're looking at what? Outside the organization. So we are looking at the strength and then the weaknesses. what are the strengths of the organization? What are the things that this organization can lay its hands on, the resources that it has, the human capabilities, the material resources that it has, that it can turn into what? Aspect that can give it a competitive edge over its competitors. And then you also have to look at the weaknesses. What are some of the things that your organization is not doing well, is unable to do well? All those must be considered in assessing the strategic capability of the organization. The next point is about expectations and purposes. You should be able to analyze the expectations of stakeholders. You should be able to, especially the key stakeholders of the organization. You should be able to analyze the strategic position of the organization, and this requires management to make decisions about the purpose of the entity and what it is trying to achieve. Why is the entity in existence in the first place, and what is it trying to achieve in the long run? Now, some organizations would make a formal statement of their purpose and then the reason for their existence in the form of what we call a mission statement. And so if you go to the websites of some organizations, you have a mission statement. Sometimes you enter an organization's premises and then you have the mission statement pasted boldly at the reception or at a visible place. So these are intentions that the organizations have made to communicate their mission to the general public and then their staff. So after considering the strategic position of the organization, as we have here, the next is for you to consider the strategic choices after you know where you are as an organization compared to your competitors. You ask yourself, what kind of choices are you going to make? What kind of choices are you going to make in order to gain those competitive edge over your competitors? What kind of choices are you going to make? So that is what strategic choices. This involves identifying different possible strategies that the entity might adopt and making a choice of the preferred strategies from the different alternatives that are available. So first of all, identify all the alternatives that are available. That becomes your choice or the choices. And then from these choices, you pick the one that the organization is going to go with in order to achieve competitive advantage. Now, to this, there are three aspects. We have the corporate level and international level. That is one aspect. We have the business level strategies, and then we have the, excuse me, we have the development directions and methods. We'll look at them one after the other. So in terms of strategic choices, these are the three levels that you need to consider. Now, the corporate and international level is looking at deciding what the entity should be doing in the first place. What should your organization be doing? Which products or services should your organization be selling, be producing and selling? And in what markets should these products be sold? In what markets? Again, the organization or the directors must be able to decide whether to operate internationally, and if so, in what countries. If you want to operate internationally, the decision to operate in a particular country is very important and is not just an easy thing to do. You need to make a lot of what? Considerations. All right, so that is one level. The next level is to make a choice on the business level strategy. Business level strategy, here we are talking about deciding on whether the organization is going to compete based on cost leadership or differentiation. We've seen this already. If the organization decides, for instance, to compete based on differentiation, how does it intend to make its product or services different from those of its competitors? Because it's one thing saying you want your product to look different from your competitors, and then another deciding on exactly how different it looks. Sometimes you may perceive that your product is looking different, but then in the eyes of your competitors or your customers, it looks just the same or not too significantly different from your from your competitors. And so you have to consider this and consider it deeply. In the era of technology, you may have to take advantage of technology to be able to actually compete based on differentiation. The next level is development directions and methods. As an organization, how do you intend to grow? Okay, how do you intend to expand the asset size of the organization? How do you intend to move from one size to the other, from one country to the other, from one jurisdiction to the other, from one market to the other? This is what we call development directions and method. Do you want to grow by internal growth? That is achieving growth by gradual development. You are growing gradually. Okay, so maybe at the end of the year, when you're able to make profit, you push back the profit into the organization to expand the organization. This is what we call internal growth. You are growing internally by using your internal resources or by relying on your existing shareholders to be able to expand the organization. Are you going to do this by making acquisitions of other companies so that, for instance, you look at your competitors and then you buy them? Once you buy your competitors, you're able to have direct access to customers or larger customer base. And so this is a decision that you have to take. Though it comes as a risky decision, the organization must be able to take that decision whether to grow by acquisition or whether to grow slowly by internal growth. Are you going to grow and develop by seeking strategic alliances? That is, aligning yourself to other organizations, collaborating with other organizations in order to grow. Is that a decision you are going to do or you are going to make? And then you should also be able to make choices about the product and market. What kind of product are you putting in what kind of market? You are picking, are you going to pick your current products and push them into a new market? Are you going to pick your current products and keep them in your current market? Are you going to pick or develop a new product and put them in your current market? Or you're going to develop a new product and put them in a new market? These are considerations we will look at when we discuss Ansoff's matrix. It's a 2x2 matrix we'll consider later in the course of our discussions. All right, now, there is a problem making strategic choices. It is not as easy as you see these things. For one, you can say it is easy to make a choice, but then it is also just as easy to make the wrong choice, right? It is easy to say or decide that you are going to operate in Nigeria. Currently, you're operating in Ghana, you want to operate in Nigeria. It's so easy to make that decision, but then it is also so easy to make the wrong decision, right? So you should be asking yourself, should strategic decisions be based on the significant changes happening in the environment, or success should be achieved by focusing on the strength of the entity and then you stick to doing what you do best as an organization? Should the entity choose a cost leadership strategy and sell a product at the lowest prices possible, or should it seek to add in value by way of what? Differentiation. This is an easy decision to make. At the same time, it is so easy to make the wrong decision. There are some markets where differentiation may not give you or may not provide you the best strategy. You can easily fail if you pick differentiation. There are some markets that if you pick cost leadership, you can easily fail. So you need to be able to have a good information to rely on to be able to take this decision, whether to compete based on cost leadership or based on differentiation. So you should be asking yourself, should the entity specialize in one type of product or one market? Should you just produce one product onto the market, or you should produce different products onto the market? Should you be considering just one market or different markets? These are critical decisions that every organization should be able to make. And you ask yourself, what is the best way to manage the entity in order to get the best out of its resources? How best do you manage your organization to get the best out of your organization? Right. And then what management style is best suitable for your organization? These are important decisions that have to be made. And like I said, they are easy to be made, but then at the same time, they are so easy to make the wrong choice. Now, the final element of strategic management is what we call strategy into action. So after you have considered your strategic position as an organization and then made the choices that you have made, the next thing is for you to take this into action. That is what we call strategy into action. That is the last element we are going to look at. So with strategy into action, this simply means implementing the chosen strategies that we saw previously. And again, here there are three aspects to implementing your strategy. We have organizing, enabling, and then managing change. These are the three aspects of strategy into action. We'll consider them one after the other. Okay. So when we say organizing, when an organization sets out to put its strategy into action, one key element is to ensure that there is an organization structure. So directors must establish the organization structure, and this will help the organization to implement its strategy effectively in order to achieve its strategic targets. Organizing simply means putting into place a management structure and delegating authority. And we realize that for a bigger organization, the work is quite enormous. One person, the CEO, is unable or cannot do all the work. And so he delegates the work to his directors or the directors of the organization, who are responsible for the various aspects of or the various functional aspects of the organization. And so they implement the strategy of the organization on behalf of the CEO and then the board of directors of the organization. Beyond organizing or drawing an organizational structure, every individual within the organization should be made responsible and accountable for the different aspects of the organization's strategy. So for each aspect of the organization strategy, somebody must be responsible for decision making of those strategies, right? And then beyond that, they should be able to be accountable. There should be an accountability clause within the organization so that, for instance, at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter, there will be what call it, accountability in the form of let's say quarterly management meeting, assessing the what do you call it, the performance of the various units or functions within the organization. Right. And then again, as part of organizing the entity, every resource within the organization must be used efficiently to support the achievement of strategic objectives. Okay, so as an organization, you may have a lot of resources, but then it is not enough to have your resources. It's not enough to have the resources. These resources must be used efficiently. We are talking about human resources. We are talking about land. We are talking about equipment. We are talking about technology. We are talking about any other resource that the organization has. All these must be used efficiently. Again, there should be strategies within the organization to make full use of the resources. Sometimes you may have resources, all right, but then you are not using the resources. You're operating under capacity, far below capacity. How do you get benefit from those resources that you have invested in? So a consideration of making full use of these resources should be done in order to be able to organize or put the strategy or the strategic choices into action within the organization. Next, we are looking at how to manage change. Okay, how to manage change. How do you manage change as an organization? Once you have made strategic choices and you are going to implement them, chances are that a lot of these things you are going to implement are going to be what? New things. And if you are going to introduce new things into an organization, the question is, this is going to impact on the people that work in the organization. It's going to impact on their daily activities within the organization. Okay? And so you ask yourself, how are you going to manage this change? You just don't implement and expect that people will become accustomed to the new things you are bringing into the organization. You should be able to what? Inform them. They should understand the strategy. They should understand the new things that you want to implement in the organization, and then get their buy-in. Let them buy in, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to what? Implement the strategies you are putting in place, right? Now, the kind of change you are bringing into an organization may be very significant, and so you need to get people to buy in. Some of these changes may not be that much significant, and even that, you still need to be able to manage these changes so that you don't shortchange yourself, and then you don't shortchange the organization. Now, most entities exist in a rapidly changing environment. Trust me, especially when it comes to technology. Technology is changing things rapidly within the business environment. And so you should be able to manage these technological changes and then the impact they have on the organization. Take notice that implementing strategy always would mean that you have to make changes. Sometimes you need to employ new hands, you need to employ new skills, you need to lay off some employees, and so on and so forth. These are changes that can have dire consequences on the organization. It can make or unmake the organization. Now, making change successfully is therefore an important aspect of strategic management. Now, in summary, what have we looked at? We've looked at strategic positioning. Okay, so we've talked about, basically what we've talked about is business analysis or strategic management, right? And we've talked about the fact that if you are carrying out a strategic management, you have three main elements, basically the strategic position, strategic choices, and then strategic action. And one leads into the other. Your strategic position, consideration or analysis of your strategic position will now enable you to make certain choices or strategic choices. After making those choices, you go ahead to implement them. Now, in implementing these actions or in implementing these choices, you need the functions within the organization. You need to carry out financial analysis, very important. You need to carry out project management, especially for the very new things you are implementing. You need to implement information technology. In this day and age, most organizations operate with what? Information technology. So you need to manage this function. You need to manage your business process change. All these are important, right? And these emanate from what? Your strategic action. These are the things that will help you to be able to what? Implement your strategy. Now, so it therefore tells us that there's a direct link between these three elements of strategic management and these aspects of strategic action or implementation. Right. And you do all these things with the use of what? People, or with people. People are going to ensure that you carry out successful financial analysis, you carry out your project management, information technology, implement them, and then business process change. These are going to be hinged on people. And so we need to ensure that we carry the people along, not just the directors, not just senior management, but the very last employee, including the cleaner in the environment, should be aware of the new things we are trying to implement in the organization. And this goes back to help achieve the organizational strategy. So in summary, this is what we have discussed. Now let's shift our attention to organizational purpose and strategy. Here, basically, we are looking at the hierarchy of objectives and plans. As an organization, or let me say most organizations, well-structured organizations would have well-planned objectives or well-set out objectives and plans, okay? And these are considered at various levels. So we'll look at the levels of these plans. Now, as part of a strategic review, management should always reconsider the purpose of the entity, okay? Even though you set out that the organization has a particular purpose, you need to keep reminding yourself the purpose of that organization. What is the organization trying to do? For what reason is this organization in existence? You need to be able to keep reminding yourself so that you can stay in focus, right? You can stay in focus. In the strategic planning process, goals, objectives, and strategies should be decided with the aim of fulfilling the entity's purpose. A business entity should have a hierarchy of aims and objectives, and we'll look at the aims and objectives. The first and the foremost is the mission, which is the overall purpose of the organization. The mission is basically why the organization exists. That is the mission of the organization. That is the overall purpose. Now, the mission is now going to, or it will now have to be broken down into goals. That is the general overall aims of the organization. These goals would have to be broken down into specific overall aims and objectives, right? So the goals are general overall aims. The objectives are what? Specific overall aims. Now, once you've been able to break down your goals into objectives, the next thing is to put in place strategies and strategic aims in order to achieve these objectives. And these are more detailed long-term targets that is put in place, right? Beyond this, you have to be able to break these strategies into tactical plans and aims. And so this would be able to help you to implement the target and budgets that were obtained or that were derived from what? From the strategies. And then finally, the tactical plans and aims will be broken down into operational plans and aims in order to implement this strategy at the grassroots level or from the grassroots. Right. Okay. So let's talk a bit about the mission. We've explained that the mission is the purpose of an organization and the reason why that organization exists, right? And we've also mentioned the fact that you, as an organization, you need to keep on reminding yourself why you are in business. Why do you exist, right? And so some organizations will carve out this mission into what we call a mission statement, right? And put it on their website, put it in front of their building, any conspicuous place where people can see it, workers can see it, management can see it, suppliers, and everybody can see it, the general public can see it, so that everybody knows why this organization exists. Okay, now in coining a mission statement, Peter Drucker suggested that it should answer the following fundamental questions. One, what is your business? As an organization, what is your business? What is the value of your business to your customers, right? And what will your business be? Okay. And then lastly, what should our business be? So first, what is our business? What is our value to the customer? 3, what will our business be? And finally, what should our business be? Right. So these 4 questions should be able to help you to carve out the mission for or of an organization. All right. At this point, I'll give you a little assignment. Okay. So I would want you to look at the mission statement for 2 commercial banks. Let me say 2 local commercial banks, 2 foreign or international commercial banks. Look out for their mission statement. Look at the mission statement of a manufacturing organization, 2 manufacturing organizations. Look at the mission statement of 2 telcos, right? Look at the mission statement of 2 educational institutions, right? And then finally, look at the mission statement of 2 non-governmental organizations, NGOs, okay? So put this in a very short report, maybe 1 or 2 pages, and then share it with me. All right. Now, the question is, why are we interested in the mission of an organization? What is the relevance? What's the purpose in drawing a mission for an organization or in making a mission statement for an organization? First of all, this is to provide a basis for consistent strategic planning decision. So once you have the mission carved out in a statement, everybody knows it. It helps you to be able to be consistent in what? In your strategic planning decisions. It will also help in translating the broad intentions and purposes into corporate objectives. It will help you to provide a common purpose for all groups and individuals within the organization, right? And it will also help to inspire employees. When employees see the mission of the organization, they are inspired by what they see, and they would help to achieve the mission of this organization. Okay? The mission statement also helps to establish goals and ethics for the organization. And then finally, it improves the understanding and support for the organization from external stakeholder groups, not just your directors, not just your senior management, not just your employees, but external stakeholders, such as government organizations, the general public, the community within which the organization operates, the tax authorities, and so on and so forth. These are quite important for every serious organization. All right. Now, next after the mission, all right, an organization should break its mission down into what? Goals and objectives. Goals are the broad aims for the entity to achieve, expressed in narrative terms. They are, like I said, usually broad. For example, an entity might have the goal of maximizing the wealth of its shareholders. This is quite broad. You want to maximize the wealth of your shareholders, all right? Or you want to be the world's leading business entity in one of its markets, in one or more of its markets, right? This is broad. How do you do this? You do this by setting what? Objectives, by carving out objectives from these goals, right? So objectives are derived from the goals of an entity and are aimed at expressing the form of the goals, okay? And these objectives are usually measurable, right? You should be able to measure it. You should be able to tell whether you're able to achieve these objectives, okay? There should be specificity to these objectives, right? Objectives generally are required to be SMART. Objectives are required to be SMART. So it's an acronym. So S for specific means your objective should be specific and then should be stated clearly, right? M for measurable, it should be measurable so that you know whether you are achieving it or not. It should be agreed or attainable, right? You don't have just one party setting the objective and then expecting the other party to implement it, right? You should be able to sit at a table and agree on the objectives that you are setting for the organization, right? Next, it should be realistic, okay? You can set objectives that are not realistic. Nobody is able to achieve it. That is not good enough. Your objective should be SMART, should be realistic, and then what? Finally, it should be time-bound. You should have a timeline for these objectives. You shouldn't leave it open-ended. Otherwise, you may never be able to achieve these objectives. Right. Now, typically, an organization may set out its corporate objective to, for instance, double the share price within the next 10 years. This is a typical objective, okay? As an overall objective for the entity. Now, in order to achieve this corporate objective, it is necessary to set strategic objectives for key aspects of the strategy, right? Examples include increasing annual profit after tax by, let's say, 125% in the next 10 years, introducing an average of 3 new products each year for the next 10 years, becoming the market leader in 4 market segments within the next 10 years, and an improvement in each case from the current position of second largest competitor in each of these market segments. So these are typical examples of an organization's strategic objectives. Now, goals and objectives clearly can therefore be used to convert an entity's mission into specific strategies, right? So this is one key importance of setting out your goals and objectives, is for you to be able to break down your mission, the reason why you are in business, the reason why the organization exists, into what? Specific strategies that are achievable within what? Some reasonable limit of time. Okay. Let's look at stakeholders and stakeholder expectations. Stakeholders are very important in every organization. For every organization, there are identifiable stakeholders. We have key stakeholders and we have minor stakeholders. First of all, a stakeholder is any group of individual or external organization that have an interest or a stake in what the entity does or is trying to achieve. So these are stakeholders. Some stakeholders, you should remember, have much more influence than others. So we call them what? Key stakeholders, critical stakeholders, right? It is because they have more influence than the others. Those others are what? Not significant or may not be significant, but they are what? Stakeholders, right? Okay. Now, each of these stakeholders have their own expectations, okay? You can identify for most organizations, the key stakeholders are what? The shareholders or the owners of the organization. They are the key stakeholders. They are the ones who put their funds together to establish the organization and set a purpose or set a mission for the organization. So they are the key stakeholders. Beyond that, you have lenders who are also stakeholders, suppliers and customers who are also stakeholders, directors, senior executive managers, other managers and employees or groups of employees, employee groups, unions, and so on and so forth. They are all stakeholders. Government, whether local government, state government, federal government, these are all stakeholders. And then you also have external pressure groups, such as environmental protection groups and human rights groups. Even the local community within which the organization operates, you have what? The people there are what? Stakeholders. Because if they are not happy with you, maybe for instance, you are polluting the environment, you are polluting the only water that serves as a source of drinking water for them, they will stand up against you, and you may not be able to what? Achieve your organization's objectives. So you consider them as what? Key stakeholders. Even to the extent that terrorist groups, armed robbers, they are all stakeholders. Because if a terrorist attacks your organization, it has dire consequence on the organization. If robbers enter your organization, it has dire consequence on your organization. So all these are identifiable stakeholders for every organization, and we need to be able to identify them. Now, beyond identifying your stakeholders, you need to be able to tell the importance of each of these stakeholders, right? Like I said, some stakeholders have more influence than others, right? And so you need to be able to what? Deal with the importance or identify the importance of this or these stakeholders. Now we can do this by analyzing this on a 2x2 matrix, right? Where you consider the level of importance of the stakeholder as against, excuse me, as against the position on the matter at hand, right? So if we have a 2x2 matrix, horizontally we have the importance of the stakeholder, and then vertically we have the position on the issue. Now from left to right, so we have -5. As you move towards the right, you are moving towards 0, you are moving towards the positive, okay? Where you are moving, effectively moving from less important stakeholders to what? A more important stakeholder or more important stakeholders when you move from left to right. Now, when you're moving from the top to the bottom, that is the vertical, you're also moving in terms of the position of the stakeholders on the issue at hand, okay? A negative position, you move towards a neutral position to a high stake in the matter at hand or under consideration. And so because this is a 2x2 matrix, we have 4 boxes. So if you have a stakeholder who is very important, okay, let's rate them +5. And then their position on an issue is quite low. I mean, it's very low. Let me say negative, okay? Then you can classify these stakeholders as what? Antagonistic. Antagonistic, right? Now, if you have a stakeholder who is less important, and then their position on the matter is not high, they don't have high stake in their position, then we refer to them as what? Problematic. If you have a stakeholder who has a high stake in the matter at hand, and then he is very, very important as a stakeholder, we refer to them as what? Supporters. And finally, if you have a stakeholder who is not as important, but then they have high stake on the issue at hand, we call them what? Low priority stakeholders. Okay. Now the other matrix we are considering is the Mendeley stakeholder power interest matrix. So here we are considering the same 2x2 matrix, but then the element we are considering here is the interest of the stakeholder and the power of the stakeholder. This will be able to help us to analyze our stakeholders and put them in a position, identify them, and be able to deal with them, right? So in the same vein, from left to right, horizontally, in terms of the interest of the stakeholder, we have very low interest, moving up to very high interest, up to 10. Vertically, we are moving from a weak stakeholder, that is in terms of the power of the stakeholders, moving from 0 all through to 5 to 10. 10 being the strong power, and then here on the interest axis, that's the horizontal axis, 10 being the highest interest. And so if you have a stakeholder who have very high interest, okay, but then they have low power, such stakeholders are kept in the box here. We refer to them as what? Keep informed. That is, just give them information, because they have no power, but they have high interest in your organization. So what do? You give them information. That is a way of what? Managing your stakeholders. Now, the next group are stakeholders who have very low interest in the matter, okay? And then also, they don't have power at all. Their power, they are very weak. For such, you give minimal efforts. You don't really do much, okay? In terms of managing them, you don't really do much. Now, let's look at stakeholders who have very high interest in the matter at hand, and they are also very powerful. Such stakeholders, we refer to them as what? Key players. Key players. These stakeholders, you have to handle them or manage them with care. Otherwise, they can make or unmake the organization. And then lastly, we have stakeholders who have very low interest, but then they have very high power. These stakeholders should be what? Always kept satisfied. Keep on satisfying them. Keep on satisfying them. If not, they can ruin the organization for you. And so this brings us to the end of today's lecture. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's have any question or comments from you, if there is. If there's no question, we bring today's lecture to an end. Thank you so much. We'll meet on another day to continue. Until then, it's a bye-bye from me.